Good afternoon. We will continue to study about the determiner which applied as a subordinating conjunction. The second example that the determiner which is applied is this. We love which virtue you are gifted from Jesus Christ. In this sentence, we can find that the transitive verb of the object of the transitive verb love in the main clause is indicated by the subordinate clause, which virtue you are gifted from Jesus Christ. And we find that the phrase of the general noun, which virtue, as the phrase of the subordinating conjunction with the determiner which, we can find that the phrase which virtue is applied as the object of the subjective complement gifted in the statement in the subordinate clause stated in the passive voice of the speaker. The be verb describes the subject and the past participle gifted describes the subject as the subjective complement. And this formation of the be verb and the past participle to describe the subject is for the statement in the passive voice of the speaker. And as we've dealt with the perfect tense, the second transitivity for the past participle can be found. The past participle gifted has the form of the past participle because of the structure as the subjective complement. And while the speaker changes the statement, the way of the statement from the active voice of the speaker in the perspective of the subject to the passive voice of the speaker in the perspective of the object. So the definition of the transitive verb gift still flows from the subject to the indirect object via the direct object. Which virtue, the direct object, is still conveyed to the indirect object, the listeners, who became the subject of the subordinate clause. So we can say that the definition of the transitive verb gift is still flown to the direct object, which virtue. The speaker, let's read the explanation together. The speaker indicates the object of the transitive verb love with the subordinate clause, which virtue you're gifted from Jesus Christ. The past participle gifted to practice the role as a subjective complement with a trait as an adjective conveys the definition of the transitive verb gift to the object indicated by the phrase of the noun which virtue from the subject, Jesus Christ. In the subordinate clause stated in the perspective of the indirect objects as the listeners, the object indicated by the phrase of the subordinating conjunction which virtue receives the definition of the transitive verb gift from the second transitivity that the past participle gifted includes. We can separate the main clause and the subordinate clause like this before being integrated. The first clause, that the determiner which is applied as the interrogative clause is this. Interrogative determiner is this. Which virtue are you gifted from Jesus Christ? And the second clause that became the main clause is this. We love the virtue. the speaker finds the fact that the phrase of the general noun, the virtue in the second clause become the main clause, and the phrase of the general noun which virtue in the interrogative clause are the shared indication. So the speaker abbreviates the shared indication in the main clause and replaces this phrase of the main clause by the entire first clause that became declarative statement. That's how this second example is stated. The speaker links the interrogative clause transformed into the declarative clause to the main clause as the subordinate clause, because the subject of the be verb are indicated by the phrase of the noun which virtue corresponds with the object of the transitive verb love, indicated by the phrase of the noun the virtue. The third example that the determiner which is applied as the subordinating conjunction with the noun is this. Which system you had adjusted in changed now. Again. We find that the verb of the main clause is changed, the intransitive verb, and the subject of the main clause is indicated by the subordinate clause, which system you had adjusted in. And according to the basic premise to apply the determiner which, we can say that the sorts, the types of the systems were ranged in a range already. And let's read the explanation together. The speaker indicates the subject of the transitive verb changed. I'm sorry, I think I have to change this explanation into the intransitive verb. Changed in the main clause with the subordinate clause which system you had adjusted in. In the subordinate clause, the phrase of the subordinating conjunction which system indicates the object of the preposition in. To receive the definition of the preposition in from the listeners as the subject, the phrase of the general noun which system in the subordinate clause is the object of the preposition in. As a noun, system is described by the determiner which, the listeners can understand that the object indicated by the noun system is included in the predetermined range set by the speaker. We can analyze the sentence by the two clauses before being integrated into the third example. The first one, including the determiner which as the interrogative, is this. Which system had you adjusted in? The second clause that became the main clause is this. The system changed again. The speaker finds out the fact that the phrase of the general noun, which system, and the other phrase, the system in the second clause, are the shared indication. And the speaker abbreviates the shared indication of the main clause and replaces the subject by the entire first clause transformed into the declarative statement. And that's how the third example is stated. The speaker links the interrogative clause transformed into the declarative clause to the main clause as the subordinate clause, because the object of the preposition in indicated by the phrase of the noun which system corresponds with the subject of the intransitive verb changed by the phrase of the noun, the system. Thank you for watching.